I didn't find the notebook by looking for it. That's the part that still bothers me the most. If I had been searching for something hidden, something mysterious, then at least the discovery would have felt intentional. Instead, it happened because a coat hanger slipped and struck the back of my wardrobe with a hollow knock that didn't belong there. The sound was wrong. Walls don't sound hollow. Not in apartments this old. Curiosity is a dangerous thing when you live alone, because no one is there to tell you to stop when you start prying at things you don't understand. I pulled the panel loose, expecting dust or wiring or maybe nothing at all. Instead, there was a notebook tucked inside the wall as if someone had hidden it in a hurry and hoped no one would ever think to look there again. It was heavier than it should have been. That was the first thing I noticed when I picked it up. The cover was plain black, the edges worn and softened like it had been handled for years. When I opened it, the smell of ink and paper drifted out like a memory trying to escape. The handwriting inside was mine. Not similar. Not close. Mine. The same uneven slant, the same way I press too hard when I write certain letters. And at the top of the first page were 5 words that made my stomach tighten before my brain could react. If you're reading this, you forgot again. I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, but because laughter is what your body does when it doesn't know what else to do. I told myself it had to be an old journal. Something I wrote during a sleepless night and buried for dramatic effect. But the next line took that comfort and crushed it immediately. It said I wouldn't remember writing the notebook. It said forgetting was part of the problem. The longer I read, the more the room seemed to grow quieter around me, as if the apartment itself had stopped breathing to listen. The pages described my home in unsettling detail. The chipped mug by my bed. The faint stain near the sink. The squeak in the hallway floorboard I always avoided stepping on at night. These weren't guesses. They were facts. It felt like the notebook knew my life better than I did. Halfway down the 3rd page, the first rule appeared in bold ink: do not assume you are safe just because nothing has happened yet. I stopped reading after that and searched the apartment. Every cupboard. Every drawer. Under the bed. Behind the sofa. I didn't know what I expected to find. Evidence of a prank. Proof someone had broken in. Something that would make this make sense. I found nothing. When I returned to the notebook, the next paragraph described exactly what I had just done. It said I always try to prove the guide wrong before I accept it. That was the moment denial started to crack. The notebook began listing small events that would happen over the next few days. Lights flickering at precise times. Objects moving slightly from where I left them. The faint sound of footsteps in empty rooms. It didn't sound like speculation. It sounded like documentation. Like someone had lived through this before and was trying to map the storm. The first prediction came true the following evening. At exactly 7:12 p.m., the kitchen light flickered 3 times. Not once. Not randomly. 3 times. Exactly as written. I stood there staring at the bulb long after it steadied, waiting for the comfort of coincidence. It never came. Instead, a quiet realization crept in: the notebook wasn't predicting the future. It was remembering it. The next rule warned me not to ignore the feeling of being watched. It said the sensation would arrive before any visible sign. That it would feel irrational and easy to dismiss. That ignoring it had always led to the same mistake. The word always was underlined 3 times. I wish I could say the feeling didn't come, but that would be a lie. It started subtly. A sense of pause in the air. Like a room holding its breath. The silence changed after that. It wasn't the normal quiet of an empty apartment. It felt deliberate. Like the pause before someone speaks. Sleep became impossible. The notebook warned that exhaustion made the pattern harder to see and easier to forget. It told me to set alarms, to take notes, to document everything. I followed the instructions because by then the idea of ignoring the guide felt worse than trusting it. Halfway through the notebook, the tone changed. The handwriting grew heavier, more rushed. The entries spoke of attempts, failures, strategies that almost worked, mistakes that erased weeks of progress. Every page felt like the confession of someone racing against time. One entry said the events weren't random. They were part of a loop that reset when certain conditions were met. It ended with a sentence that made my hands shake. This isn't the first time you've read this. Time started slipping after that. Small gaps in my memory appeared like cracks in glass. The notebook warned this would happen. It said forgetting was the greatest danger. That memory couldn't be trusted, only the written word. The later pages contained diagrams of my apartment, maps of my daily routine, lists of objects I should never move. Seeing my life reduced to instructions felt wrong, like I had become a machine following a maintenance manual. One page had been torn out. Beneath it was a warning: if the missing page returns, do not read it. The entries grew more desperate. The ink pressed so hard into the paper it left grooves on the next page. It felt like reading messages from a version of myself who knew he was running out of time. Near the end, the instructions became shorter, direct, focused on survival rather than explanation. The second-to-last page said the guide had been written after countless attempts to escape the cycle. Each one ended the same way. The final rule filled an entire page: when you finish reading this, hide the notebook again. The last paragraph explained why. The notebook had to be hidden somewhere I would eventually find it. Discovery was the only way the cycle could continue. The only chance to break it. And on the final page, written in shaking handwriting, was a single sentence: the next time you read this, you won't remember finishing it.